The Cross and the Switchblade, Chapter 3. Miles, I said, when the bridge was 50 miles behind us. Do you mind very much if we drive home by way of Skirrington? Miles knew what I was referring to. My parents lived there. I wanted, frankly, to cry on their shoulders a bit. By the time we reached Scranton next morning, the story was in the newspapers. The Michael Farmer trial was well covered by the press, but news items on it had begun to run scarce. The grisly aspects of the murder had been explored and editorially shuttered until the last ounce of horror had been wrung from them. The psychology, sociology, and penology of the case were long since exhausted. Now, just as the flow of ink was threatening to falter, here appeared the bizarre satellite to warm an editor's heart, and the papers made the most of it. We were in the outskirts of Scranton before it occurred to me to wonder how my parents would be affected by all this. I'd been as eager to see them as a little boy with a hurt, but now that I was actually here, I dreaded the moment of meeting. After all, the name that had exposed to ridicule was theirs also. Maybe, said Miles as we turned into their driveway. They wouldn't have seen it. They had seen it. A newspaper was spread out on the kitchen table, turned to the UP account of the wild-eyed, Bible-waving young preacher who had been thrown out of the Michael Farmer murder trial. Mother and Dad greeted me politely, almost formally. David, Mother said, what a pleasant surprise. Hello, son, said Dad. I sat down. Miles had tactfully gone for a little stroll, knowing that those first few moments should be private ones. I know what you're thinking. I nodded my head toward the newspaper. I'll say it for you. How are you ever going to leave this down? Well, son, my father said, it's not so much us, it's the church, and you, of course, you could lose your ordination. Realizing his great concern for me, I kept silent. What are you going to do when you get back to Phillipsburg, David? Mother asked. I haven't thought that far yet. Mother went to the ice box and got out a bottle of milk. Do you mind if I give you a piece of advice? She asked, pouring me a glass. She was always trying to put pounds on me. Often, when Mother was ready to give me advice, she didn't stop to ask my permission. This time, though, she waited, milk bottle in hand, until I had actually nodded my head for her to go on. It was as if she recognized that this was a battle I'd have to fight out by myself and that I might not want a mother's advice. When you get back home, David, don't be too quick to say you were wrong. The Lord moves in mysterious ways his wonders to perform. It's just possible this is all part of a plan you can't see from where you're standing. I have always believed in your good judgment. All the way back to Phillipsburg, I mulled over Mother's words. What good could possibly come out of this fiasco? I took Miles to his house and then drove to the parsonage by a back street. If it's possible to sneak into your own driveway with something as big as a car, then that's what I did. I closed the car door so that it wouldn't slam, and I almost tiptoed into my own living room. There was Gwen. She came over and put her arms around my neck. Poor David, she said. It was only after a long silent time just being together that she finally asked, what went wrong? I told her in detail what had happened since I had seen her last, and then I told her of my mother's thought that perhaps nothing had gone wrong. You're going to have a hard time convincing this town of that, David. The telephone's been ringing. And it kept on ringing for the next 3 days. One of the town officials called to bawl me out. Fellow ministers didn't hesitate to tell me they thought it was cheap publicity. When I finally dared to walk downtown, heads turned to follow me all along the street. One man who was always trying to bring more business into town pumped my hand and slapped me on the back and said, Say, Reverend, you really put old Phillipsburg on the map. Hardest of all was meeting my own parishioners that Sunday. They were polite and silent. From the pulpit that morning, I looked at the problem as squarely as I could. I know that all of you must be asking yourselves questions, I said, talking to 200 stony faces. First of all, you feel for me, and I appreciate that. But then you must be saying to yourselves, what kind of egoist do we have for a preacher, a man who thinks that every whim he gets is a mandate from God? This is a legitimate question. It would surely look as though I had confused my own will for God's. I had been humbled and humiliated. Perhaps it was to teach me a lesson. And yet, let's ask ourselves honestly, if it is true that the job of us humans here on earth is to do the will of God, can we not expect that in some way He will make that will known to us? Stony faces still. No response. I wasn't making a very good case for the life of guidance. But the congregation was remarkably kind. Most of the people said they thought I had acted foolishly, but that they knew my heart was in the right place. One good lady said, "We still want you even if nobody else does." After that memorable statement, she did spend a long time explaining that she hadn't meant it to sound like that. Then a strange thing happened. In my nightly prayer sessions, one particular verse of scripture kept occurring to me. It came into my mind again and again. All things work together for good to them that love God and are called according to His purpose. It came with great force and a sense almost of reassurance, though to the conscious part of my mind nothing reassuring was conveyed. But along with it came an idea so preposterous that for several nights I dismissed it as soon as it appeared. Go back to New York.